Well, good afternoon, everyone. Here we are today with our very special episode with Ron Baker. We are just so happy he agreed to come with us. We're like oozing, just like waiting for this to happen
I know,
all
I've been
week.
excited since we
I
found out
know.
you're coming on. I just have been
Oh
like,
gosh, we've been so happy all week just to know Ron was coming on with us. So Deb's going to go into a bunch of questions in a minute, but I'm going to tell one quick Ron Baker story that I have. Is we were at Scaling New Heights just a few months ago, and Ron and I were standing outside where he was going to have his session, just kind of talking and waiting a few minutes, having a cup of water or something. A woman comes running up to me and she starts saying, oh, Donna, I love your podcast. I love your YouTube. I watch all your videos. You guys are so wonderful. And she turns to Ron and she says, and I know you're someone famous too. I could not have had anything better happen. And all I could think about is there's no camera on us.
yeah,
And that was my conference memory that will last forever, I think. So, with that, we'll go into learning more about Ron and everything he is up to these days.
well, I can tell you how thrilled I am, and both Don and I are thrilled that you have taken the time to be with us today because to me, you are one of the gods of the accounting industry. And how much you think, and you just amaze me with your brainiac power. So that you're here is just beyond for me.
Well, wow.
But
Well, I just want to say thank you, ladies, for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to the
well,
conversation.
it kind of it raises the level of our podcast. Our YouTube channel. We have
I don't know
Ron.
about that.
Who did
We'll
you
see.
have? I mean,
To be determined.
well, but we are thrilled that you're here. And I met you, I think, at a Sleater conference originally, and I remember because I remember when I was 25, I said, why don't we charge a flat rate? I mean, when I first started in this industry. And then I went to the conference at Sleater, and you started talking about this, and I go, "Oh my God, someone else thinks like me." And of course, you had already written the books and all of that stuff. So I said, "Well, so what are the?" That's what's so exciting to me. And the first thing you talked about was always value pricing, and you said that was a thing that accountants should use. Not you talked about that a little earlier. Can you explain what you meant by value pricing and how we shouldn't say that?
Yeah. My first book that's no longer in print is called The Professional's Guide to Value Pricing. And because I'm part economist, economists have been talking about value and pricing for literally centuries. And it's even older than that. But I didn't want to rewrite the literature, so I used the term value pricing. But in the books that I've written, if you read closely enough, and I think people miss this, I say don't use this term with your customers. I didn't call it value pricing when I started it in my firm. I called it fixed price agreements because it sounded less threatening and it conveyed more value, like a fixed rate mortgage, because it communicated certainty and predictability. And I'm a big believer that firms should literally brand and name their pricing approach. I think Southwest calls it transparency. No cancellations, no extra baggage charges, none of that stuff. And I think that's a good thing to do because it separates you from the competition, that you're giving certainty and predictability with respect to your pricing and you're not putting them on the clock.
Now
Customer
you mentioned a law firm, and they tell us about that law firm so anybody wants to look, they can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, that law firm is called Moores, Moores, and they're in Australia. So if you Google them, it'll come up. Look for an Australian web address. And they use a thing called MAP, M-A-P. And they use that acronym, and it stands for Moore's Agreed Pricing. It's value pricing. It's upfront. It's for a particular scope of work. If something happens outside, they use change requests, change orders, but and they give you three options. But the bottom line is they're giving you certainty in price and predictability. And this is a law firm, and they do litigation, and they're still willing to give a fixed price for it. So I think it's an enormous competitive advantage for them to position themselves that way in the legal space, and it's certainly same thing in the accounting space.
So what when we talk about developing the value for the customer. I think a lot of people get hung up on that. How do you determine the value from the customer's perspective so we can price better? How do we
Right.
do
This is a great question. And as you can imagine, since value is subjective, and I mean all value and underline all, it's one of the few times you'll hear me say, I rarely say everywhere, everything, everybody, all, but here I will. All value is subjective,
yes,
period. If
yes,
something's
Mhm.
subjective, by definition, you can't apply science to it. You can't take it into a lab and measure it. Value, to answer your question directly and in the shortest way possible, value is not a number, it's a feeling.
okay,
I'm talking to you from an Apple computer that I paid $3,500 for. Now, why I didn't buy a Dell for 700 or an HP or any one of their competitors for a lot less, I can't open up a spreadsheet and show you my ROI calculation. That's not how value works. Value is not ROI. Value is a feeling. It's a feeling about the brand. It's a feeling about the personalities in the firm I'm engaged with. It's an overall feeling. Now, price is a story. People, and of course, price is a number. We have to put a number on it ultimately, but it's also a story about your firm and your brand. So if I said to you guys, what I have a Rolls Royce outside and I'm willing to sell it to you for 10 grand, what would go on in your head instantly?
that something's wrong with it.
Something's
Yep.
wrong with it, or the EIN number's scratched out, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
because you know why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative of a
Right,
Rolls Royce.
right.
And your branding and your promise and your messaging and your marketing, it all needs to convey the same message, your positioning. I mean, you can be Morton's or you can be McDonald's.
I
Both sell beef. But if you walk into McDonald's expecting Morton's or vice versa, you're not going to be a happy customer. And that's really important because price is part of your brand's story. But value is totally in the mind of the customer. And by the way, that mind can change like that.
and so how
Mhm.
do you figure out what the customer values? Is there a trick, a secret, a technique?
Well, it's kind of like how doctors figure out diagnosis. They start with family history, right? They dig in, they run diagnostics, they run tests. And that you've got to do the same thing. You got to start with questions. It's all about questions. It's not about showcasing your expertise, your knowledge, your ability to solve their problem. That comes later. The value conversation is focused on what is the customer trying to achieve, what's the end goal, and how, can we get there? Can we take you there? Is your expectation reasonable? Because if it's not, no matter how technically brilliant you are, if you don't hit the customer's expectations, they're not going to be happy with you, no matter how technically brilliant your work is. So I first want to know what their expectations are. What do you expect of us? And what's your end point? I think of it this way. We start with scope of value, and that determines scope of work. But
Scope of
when
value. So define
but
that for me better.
Mhm.
it's
Oh my
like
gosh,
if
that's
if if you went to an if you went to a contractor and you said, I want you to build my dream home. Well, the contractor would kind of look at you and scratch his head and say, well, okay, what's your definition of a dream home? Is it a McMansion? Is it a ranch house? What kind of fixtures does it have? Because he's got to deal with the scope of work, right? He's got to buy all the lumber and the
Okay,
plumbing and all that.
got it.
But this is why you go to an architect. The architect gets you the scope of value. A good architect might even come and live with your family to see how you live. Where do you spend the bulk of your time? In the kitchen, the family room? Do you do cooking? Do you entertain? That's scope of value. And that scope of value is going to determine the scope of work. But we tend to jump right into the scope of work because that's our safety zone. We're comfortable with, okay, this is what we have to do. You got to suspend all that and you got to have a value conversation with the customer to, first off, level set their expectations, make sure they're reasonable, and then to determine maybe there's another way to get them to the end point. there's lots of ways to fulfill an objective of the customer, and you can't start with scope of value, or I mean scope of work. You have to start with scope of value, and that requires more beautiful questions.
So a lot of times we come up with a conversation scope of value to get to for us to know the scope of work, and then we go, well, how much should we charge for all of this? So do you recommend we have a minimum price that we don't nobody walk like with Morton's Steakhouse? If you call them up, a steak is 175 bucks. So should we? Do you recommend then that we have a minimum price and then the price levels so we get to pick? So there's you know that's always a gap for me.
Sure. And absolutely, you should have minimum prices for everything in your firm. So, for example, individual tax returns, when I practiced, the minimum price was $1,500. Now, this is back in the early 90s, 1990, 1991. It was $1,500. Why? It wasn't so much a magical price, it was more of a positioning statement. We didn't want customers that weren't willing to pay that, because if they weren't willing to pay that, they were probably more likely fit for H&R Block or maybe an enrolled agent. We didn't want those customers,
Got it.
period. And the minimum price helped us keep out the tire kickers. Now, you
Right.
can have a minimum price for corporations, S corps, C corps, partnerships. You can really go overboard with the minimum price, but the important thing is to have a minimum and not go below it. And by the way, raise it every year, not retroactively for all customers, but for all new customers. And
Okay.
once we did that, once we moved from, $500, $400 tax returns to a $1,500 minimum, not only could we do more for them, but they referred us a better class of customers. And that enabled us to get rid of or fire or outsource, whatever you want to call it, C and D customers.
So if we up our confidence level and how we feel about what we do, and so raise our price, we'll attract better clients at a higher level.
Yes. Now you've got to deliver, and
Yes.
you've got to have a great customer experience. Because look, you know, I, business isn't personal. If somebody rejects you or your price, they're rejecting your offering. They're not rejecting Deborah and Donna. They're rejecting your offering. They don't see the value in it. We've got to decouple. And I know this is hard because I have a chapter in every one of my books on self-esteem and pricing. It's brutal. All professionals underprice themselves. Heck, actors and authors would underprice themselves if they didn't have agents. This is why they hire agents. They pay them 15% of their gross, not because they're nice people, it's because these agents get them a better price. If I'm selling you, Deborah, or you, Donna, I can be brave as a lion, and I will be. But if I'm selling myself, I'm going to wimp out. That's human nature.
I want you to like me. Please, like Sally Field. You like me. You really like
Like
me.
me.
I only charge you $1.
I love it. It's so true.
What is the most difficult thing you've come across with clients or professionals like us accepting the value pricing model, subscriptions? What's the pushback that you get?
Oh, well, you saw some of it in the
I saw
bar
some of that
at Scaling New Heights. A guy came up and assaulted me for half an hour, telling me how it's called bunk.
It was
And
a cage match. Let
and,
me tell you.
and notice that when they do that, they never take on the arguments I make. They never refute the book. Nobody's ever been able to refute the book or any of the arguments in the book. They just tell me their personal story, and I diagnose right away that this guy's a crappy pricer. Of course, he failed with
Yeah.
value pricing. But there's a lot of pushback. I mean, we are so ingrained in value equals time spent that
Mhm.
that is a colossal thing to try and move. Now, luckily, it's moved a lot, but I'll tell you that we still have a profession that majority bills by the hour.
I know. So,
Yep.
do you have any like percentages on
Yeah.
that? How many people still bill by the hour?
Yeah, I think when you look at firms that have moved away from the billable hour, I believe it is somewhere between 25 and 40%. Now, there's a lot of corroborating evidence for this. Some of it comes from the CAS survey. Now, that's just CAS departments in
Client
CPA
accounting
firms and
services.
client accounting services. But there's been a huge move away in that particular area, away from billable hours. Most is on subscription or fixed price. Um, but we are starting to see big movements among the top 100. And I'll just throw this out there, but one of the things that I'm really worried about with private equity moving into the accounting space is they don't seem to be challenging the business model. Sure, they challenge the governance model, they put in financial controls, they make investments in human capital, technology, but they're not challenging the underlying billable hour realization, utilization measurements. And if they do that, if they continue with this business model, they're going to fail.
What's interesting is somebody wanted to purchase our firm, and he wanted to hire me at $60 an hour. And I went, first off, I don't charge by the hour. Don't you see what you're getting? I mean, I just think you will fail. I mean,
Yep.
if you're starting to think in hours, I thought, forget it. Now, when you first started, it was value pricing. You could pick from 3 models: small, medium, and large, or I would say large, medium, and small. And then you went to subscription pricing, which was one price for everything, kind of like Amazon Prime. You talk about that a lot as an example. And now you've come up with a whole new thinking, which is transformational. Oh my gosh. So which have you moved away from 3 prices to 1 price to heaven knows what? I mean,
No, I still believe value pricing is a superior business model to hourly billing.
sure,
So,
that hourly billing's off the table.
right. So it's about now. I do believe that subscription is more compatible with the new transformation economy. So I think we'll see subscription hang around for a while until we get better at pricing outcomes, which is a really hard thing to grapple with as a profession. It's really hard to price for outcomes.
And what do
And
you mean that price? What is it? What do you mean price for outcomes?
well, when a customer wants to achieve a certain objective, when they want to transform, when they want to move from where they are to some desired future state, that could be in their business, their personal life. Maybe they want an estate plan so they can, protect their heirs, their grandchildren, their great grandchildren, and even posterity if they're philanthropic and want to maybe set up a foundation, whatever. That's a transformation. Now, we can do that, but we can do a lot of other transformations as well. And therefore, we can do what we call serial transformations, one after the other.
For
And
example,
for example, we can help you retire sooner. We can help you grow the value of your business. We can help you with cash flow. We can help you build your dream home, your dream second home. We can help your kid get into college. All these different things because like you always say, Deborah, we get to play around in their underwear drawer. We're intimately familiar with our customers, and that's a privileged position. So guiding these transformations, we can do it from womb to tomb.
so
Eh,
we have to price enough that would include all of those transformations,
Bingo,
not piecemeal each one. Well, you want me to tell you what's going to cost to, do a cash flow
bingo.
forecast. So we have a large enough price that we're not worrying about, well, how much is am I spending to make this internally
Exactly.
in my firm? It's high enough. And I always you said this at scaling. I thought it was great. When Amazon changes their price, they tell you all the new benefits that they have. And most people don't take advantage of it, but they go,
No.
oh, look, I can ship internationally now. Who does that? I mean, so I thought that was such a great analogy about, we include this.
Yep.
They might not do it, but at least they know you have it. And I thought that was fabulous.
It's kind of like my real comparison. I love the Amazon story too, but my real comparison is with concierge doctors.
Yeah.
You subscribe to a concierge doctor, you're covered for whatever you need medically that they can do.
Yes.
Now, there's the constraint. There's the scope of work right there. A GP can't do everything. They're not going to do knee replacement, hip surgery, cardiac surgery. You notice how the medical profession doesn't have a scope creep problem? You ever thought of that?
And why is that?
Why is that? Because they stay in their lanes. Because a firm, including bookkeepers, including accountants, CPAs, EAs, doctors, lawyers, a firm is defined, and I mean defined, by the customers it doesn't have and the offerings it doesn't make. It's defined by that.
That puts the boundaries in. This is what I will not do.
That's right.
And it's funny,
Mhm.
I one time spoke at Scaling or QuickBooks Connect, and I said, if you look at the Ten Commandments, it tells you what not to do. That means you can do everything else.
Yeah.
That's
I actually rather have you list what you do because trying to list everything you don't do would be almost impossible.
right.
And by the way, legally, and I just need to say this because there's court cases on it. If you if you list what you don't do in a legal agreement, the court will look at that and say, "Well, you didn't mention that you didn't do this, so it's covered."
Oh,
You
so
can lose your butt on that.
Yep.
So you're better off scoping or listing what you're actually going to do and then assume everything else is not included.
but I guess I mean when you're defining what you will do, I say, okay, I'm not. I always say I'm not doing contractors. I'm not doing nonprofits. So that focuses me on the people that I will help, and then what I will do for this narrow group.
Right.
That's that's how I approach.
It's always easier to be niched. I don't care. I don't care what your business model is: hourly billing, value pricing, subscription, whatever. It's easy. The most profitable firms in the world are focused and niched. Period. End of
Mhm.
story. The debate is over. It's been over, by the way, for decades. Ever since I entered the profession, the most profitable firms in the world stay in their lane.
Now, what do you think about, a lot of firms are moving to the subscription model, the flat rate pricing, blah, blah, blah. But then they pay their people hourly.
Yeah, and look, this is such a tough concept because I know the wage laws vary amongst the various states and everything, and you've got to be compliant with that. And maybe there might be good reason to pay people for hours. I'm not against measuring hours in total. I'm against allocating hours in timesheets by 6-minute increments. That
That's why I quit
Yeah.
the profession when I was 25. I go, every 6 minutes, if I'm in the bathroom too long, they know I ate some fiber last night. You know,
Yeah, exactly. You need to Google after we're off, or I can send it to you. Uh, can I sort of cuss on this? Is that okay?
yes.
Because it's in the
Yeah, it's
name.
fine.
Um, there's a commercial or a video on YouTube, and it's done by an ad agency, a big ad agency, the Canada division, and it's called Time Shits. Time Shits. You'll laugh your ass off. I
Okay.
promise you. I mean, it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen against timesheets.
Oh, I have to watch it because I had a friend come over, a colleague come over, and she was in my condo in the beach, and we have the ocean breaking in front of her, and she's looking at her phone. I go, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm watching one of my employees type an email." "What?" I go, "Why?" "Well, I pay them by the hour, and she better give me 60 minutes." And you give them capacity to think, make mistakes, dream, come up with new ideas for you. No, I want 60 minutes.
It's
And I'm thinking, and I think to myself, then she said she had key loggers on the machines and all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God,
Oh my gosh.
why would anybody want to work for you?
that, and so that's just a microcosm of the problems the profession's having attracting talent. You
Yes.
know,
Mhm.
we don't trust our people,
No.
and we're measuring the inputs because it's easy, but it has nothing to do with value. We eat our young, and then we wonder why we have a pipeline problem. I'll
Right.
tell you why we have a pipeline
Mhm.
problem. Stars don't work for idiots.
Yes.
Yes,
Not an hour
exactly.
discussing that.
We were just talking about that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're right. You have to trust them enough that they're going to do a good job. And I do believe that they want to do a good job.
Absolutely. They
Mhm.
went through, well, let's just take the case of a CPA, but we could say the same thing about a bookkeeper or an EA. They went to, probably 4 years of college, maybe two. They passed a brutal exam, whether it's an EA exam, CPA exam, or QuickBooks certification, zeros, or whatever. I mean, these are people that are a personality. They're self-motivated. They're not afraid of hard work. And if they are, well, then we made a hiring mistake and, we should get rid of them. But the average professional is conscientious, wants to do a great job, not only for themselves, but and not only for the firm, but for themselves.
Yes. So we almost have to have a value conversation with a prospective employee.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
See what are you trying to get out of this relationship here? A
Yep.
transformation, because I do believe that people aren't they choose to come to work every day. They don't do it because they have to. And I know I have restaurants here where the whole staff walked out and they
Wow.
hear, well, nobody wants to work. I said, no, you're a dick boss.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, knowledge workers are volunteers at the end of the
Yes.
day. Whether or not they step back in that elevator
Right.
is totally up to them.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think that's great. Now you have your newest book out is called what?
Time's up.
Time's Up. And that's all about what?
Subscription economy, and it's really comparing because there's a model for this, and again, it's the concierge doctors and now the direct primary care doctors as well. That's just a lower price point, by the way, um, and that's kind of my north star for what accounting firms should be. You should have your members subscribe to the firm, and anything the firm can do, they're covered. Now, I still believe you can offer options. I don't think you need three like you do in value pricing. That was a golden rule in value pricing. Got to have three options.
Right.
But in subscription, you can have just two. That's fine. There's a lot of subscription companies out there with just two offerings. You can always add a third later if things get a little bit more complex. But the bottom line is, I really do like Joe Woodard's concept of rather than talking about scope of work, because we get so hung up on scope of work and oh, if there's a change in the scope of work, we have to go to the Department of Paperwork and get a change order and put another hurdle in front of the customer, another pricing challenge. The great thing about subscription is the customer's already made the price value decision. They've subscribed. Now all we have to do is please them and exceed their expectations, and we'll keep them for life. So that doesn't mean you can't raise your prices. It doesn't mean you can't add a different tier. But I think we shouldn't charge for scope of work. I think we should charge for the nature of the work. So a bookkeeper, for instance, could have a bookkeeping level where it's just all historical. We'll do your books, we'll do the financial statements, but it's all kind of backwards looking.
Mm-hmm.
They could have a controller scope with or nature, which is, hey, we'll move you from desktop to online so you have more real-time information. We'll help you do cash flow, maybe budgeting, controller type functions. We'll help you with your spend. We'll look over your expenses to see if there's saving possibilities. Or you could have a CFO option, which will be more strategic. Will help you look forward, not just backwards. That's just like when you hire somebody. If I hire a bookkeeper, I don't expect them to sit in the C-suite, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
not it's not in the nature of the job. And same with controller. But if we start thinking about it in terms of the nature of the work that we're doing, then I think that helps get rid of these scope issues and we don't
Right.
need change orders anymore.
Right. And so, do you know any firms that are doing this now and have gotten it right?
Oh yeah, they're out there. I mean, I see them I meet them at conferences. I get scaling. I met several that are doing this. Yeah, I do think there's some now pure subscription. Um, the way that we teach it, I think that's misunderstood because I think people think if I take my total price and divide it by 12, I'm doing subscription, and that's not subscription model. That's a payment term, right? To be
Okay.
subscription, you have to plus your offering. You have to
Mhm.
continuously plus it, just like Amazon throws out new benefits all the time. And that way, when they raise your price, like you were saying, Deborah, you see this bullet point list of all the things they've added since the last time they raised your price, because they're not justifying their price increases on inflation, supply chain, tariffs, all these different things. They're just saying, no, no, look at all the value that we created for you
So,
in the
like a
last couple of
plus would
years.
be something like this. Just this week, QuickBooks changed the entire interface of what everybody has when they log in. So you could plus your offering by creating a video, doing a training with them. Let me show you the highlights. you know,
Absolutely.
and that's we have this for you. Let me set this up. You've plussed what you do to get them through the challenge of the new interface that's coming out. And Frank, frankly, I didn't know I was plussing, and I'm doing that this week.
Yeah, it's
I'm
all,
plussing.
and you know, plussing
Yeah.
doesn't just mean we have to sell our hands. We
Right,
have to provide another service to create more value. You can create a community. You could create a book club. You know, if for you could create a CFO roundtable or a CEO roundtable. This is especially powerful if you're niched. Imagine getting a bunch of doctors in a room or online and talking about common problems, and they can chat with their colleagues that happen to be your customers about what they're doing. And that's incredibly powerful. Now you have to facilitate it and you have to show up and organize it, but
right.
you're not providing a service, you're facilitating knowledge exchange. And there's a million different ways to do that that have nothing to do with doing services.
Yeah, we keep thinking we have to sell our hands, not our brains.
Right.
I love that. So, do you see that? What excites you the most about where the accounting future? Where do you think we're headed?
Well, I'm really excited by AI. I think AI is going to be amazing, and I'm not worried about it at all in terms of replay. I mean, we talk about losing jobs or whatever. You know, AI doesn't have a soul.
Right.
It's not
Mhm.
sentient, so I'm not worried about it. But I'll tell you what I am worried about. I'm not worried about AI replacing humans. I'm more worried about humans replacing AI
And
because
what do you mean by that?
we're going to become more like AI. We're going to want everything quantified, be able to measure everything. You know, maybe not right as stiltedly as GPT does. Um, I just see us becoming more like robots, and we're not robots. Robots aren't human. They don't have a soul. They don't have humanity. They don't have empathy, compassion, whatever you want to call it, sympathy. Uh, I'm more afraid of us turning into that than I am of them replacing
Now,
us.
is there any tips, tricks, thoughts that you have so we don't turn into that? Because it's a slow creep.
It is. Lean into your
Mhm.
humanity. Lean into where
Yeah.
we'll always want humans there, no matter how good AI is. I don't want my cancer, my fatal cancer diagnosis to come from Watson. I want to look a doctor in the eye. And that is
Uh-huh.
something we'll always want humans to do. Um, and I think that's that. You know, I'm not. This is why I'm not worried about AI. My co-author Paul Dunn, Times Up, that he wrote, we wrote together. He talks about the 10-80-10 rule. The 10% says you start a project or an engagement, or now we would say a transformation, and you really lean into that 10% that's human. What do you really want? Kind of like an architect talking about your dream home, right?
Right,
You're
right,
imagining all these different things in this great house. And then 80% can be done by AI.
right.
The
Mhm.
milestones, the material list, blah, blah, blah.
The
And then
boring stuff.
the boring, yeah, the repeatable, predictable stuff. And then the last 10% is showcasing that built home. And again, you lean back into the human at the 10. Now, we can argue over the percentages. Maybe
Right.
it's 20, 60, 20. I don't know. But the point is, really think about the human aspect and sure, let AI take care of all the grunt work. Nobody wants to do their own laundry anymore and hang it out in the yard. You know, nobody's waxing nostalgic about losing pin setter jobs in bowling alleys. My uncle was a pin setter. It was an incredibly dangerous job.
Yeah,
You get nailed by a pin in the head or a ball, but yet there were a bunch of kids back there setting up the pins. Those jobs are gone. Good riddance.
yeah. Well, that's thrilling. I love the 10. That, of course, I love Paul too. I've met him. And 10, 80, 10. I love that. Um, so, are you writing another book now about transformation economy?
No, because Joe Pine is, and Joe Pine is the guy who came up with the idea of the progression of economic value that we talk about and the transformation economy. And he saw it back in 1994. He knew this was coming. It's just he didn't have any examples at the time that he published his book in 1999. Now he's got tons of examples. His book is going to be out in February. It's called The Transformation Economy, and I'm trying to get Joe as a keynote speaker at Digital CPA conference next year.
Okay.
I tried this year and failed, but I'm persistent and I'm going to try and get him there next year. I think his book is going to be another worldwide bestseller like his 1999 book. I mean, This is earth-shattering stuff. This is a new economic era, not just a new business model, a new economic offering.
Okay.
And firms can either ignore it. It's kind of like the train's already left the station. You can be on it or under it.
Right. Because one of my questions was, what book should every professional read besides your own? And I guess it's Joe Pine's book.
Well, I would definitely say Joe Pine's book, but I would also say for professionals specifically, read David Maister's book, True Professionalism. It's a classic, even though it's written, I think, in the 90s, it's still as applicable today as it was when he wrote it. And it's phenomenal. He defines a true professional as a technician who cares.
Okay. And what was his last name?
Maister, Maister.
Great. And I have two personal questions I want to ask you. Is how many books do you read in a week? And because I listened to Soul of Enterprise, I read a new book today. I'm thinking, oh my God, when does he sleep? And then I always want to know, do you read them on your Kindle or do you get the real book?
I started using Kindle, I want to say 2007 or something. And once I went to Kindle, I have rarely bought a book, a physical book. I love Kindle. I can carry around my entire library. So I'm addicted to Kindle. Now, the problem is some books you just can't get on Kindle. Like I just bought one that my dad highly recommended, and I had to buy it in soft cover. But mostly it's 95% of the books I read are now on Kindle. And I probably, and I have to say, my quantity of books read in a year has gone dramatically down. And I think that has something to do with the fact that I listen to more podcasts than ever.
Like ours.
Yes, like yours, like Bookkeepers on Fire. And I've got so many podcasts in my feed, you'd be amazed. But
you have one too, the Soul of Enterprise with Ed.
Yeah, that too. I probably read somewhere between 1 and 2 books a week.
Yikes. I know you guys, I aspire to be as well read as you guys. And I keep putting it on my list. Read more, read more, read more. But anyway, we're past time. And I want to thank you for coming today. I mean, I could talk to you for hours, as you well know.
Oh, well,
That's why Deb talked the whole time. I'm like,
yeah, I noticed that, Donna. Do you have any questions?
I'm good. She covered it all.
Okay.
But she's so excited. And I'm like, I'm just going to let her go because she's your stalker. I mean, we had to go to all your things. Sit in the front row. I got to let her go.
And if Ron's speaking, I'm there. Now, you're going to be at the Reframe Conference, Hector's Reframe, in November, right?
Yep.
I'll be there too.
Oh, wonderful. And you're going to get to see Blair Enns. And I really love Blair Enns. And I think we have a difference of opinion about productizing services, which he's a fan of, and I'm not. So
that's going to be a good debate.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, good, because I can't wait. All right, well, we'll let you go and go back to your reading. And I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today. You've been a highlight of our YouTube channel. Donna, do you have any final words?
No, just thank you so much. When I sent out the emails, you were one of the first people to jump back and say, I'll be there. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And you gave me, of course, the best conference story ever that I don't think will ever be topped.
Awesome.
So I appreciate it so much. Can't wait to see you again. So thank you so much.
Will you be at Reframe, Donna?
I am not planning as of this moment. That doesn't mean that won't change.
I keep talking to her. It has to be there.
I'm sure Hector will sell you once we get off the call. He's very persuasive.
Yes, he's been working on me to go. It's just I'm on one side of the country, and the timing never works out. We'll see.
I mean,
I know.
So aren't you, Ron? You're in San Francisco.
I'm in Sonoma County, actually, in a town called Petaluma, and it's wine country. So I
know where that is.
He's in California, Donna. He's coming.
I know. My family's in Nevada. So.
Oh, okay. That's the next county south of me.
But I'm in the southern part. Yep. So
okay.
I know exactly where you are.
Yep.
All right.
Well, thanks again, Ron, and we'll see all of you next time.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Deborah.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.